Okay, my job, I'm a forestry teacher here at UF, and I focus on urban forests, basically trees in and around cities. And my research tries to understand what it is trees do for folks in and around cities. Okay, but because I only have 20 minutes, I won't go into all the aspects of the environment, air and water quality and pollution, but I'll try to focus on that natural component in cities. And cities, that's where all this growth occurs, what we've been talking about, okay? So we'll try to look at that balance between the natural environment and urban growth. Okay? So we'll quickly go over some effects that urbanization, growth has on the natural environment. Okay, in my case, because I work at a forestry school, on forests and trees in and around cities. And we'll focus on the natural environment at the local scale here. Present some studies, some facts of what it is trees do for us, okay, in our community. And my objective here is to, given the Institute's mission, is not really promote or advocate, but kind of educate you on what it is trees can do and can't do, okay, and that way you can leave with some facts, but I'll try to not promote or advocate or anything, okay? All right, and this will kind of help us assess the pros and cons of green space policies, low impact developments, terms that are used like green infrastructure, and where they do or don't work, what are their limitations, what are their advantages, okay? This morning we've heard benefits, we've heard costs, we've heard trade-offs. This will be hopefully a study where we kind of bring all that together and assess what it is nature can and can't do. All right, so growth and the environment. You can't have growth and you can't have high environmental quality. It comes at a cost. There's a trade-off there. All right, so that's the assumption I'll take, and then we'll try to get at if there is a balance between that natural environment and that urban growth. Okay, so the more urban development you have, the greater higher quality of life. You have home ownership, access to homes, jobs, economy. You'll have a backyard. You can have a car. You have all those great things, but that comes at a cost to the environment. Okay? Vegetation becomes fragmented. We pave over stuff, pave over soils, remove vegetation. That has effects on stormwater. Stormwater causes water pollution. We need that water. Soils are altered. Cities become hotter when you remove vegetation. There's more buildings. There's more heat sources. It gets hotter in cities. We use more energy. That's at a cost, both financial and environmental. Humidity, wind, and rainfall are effective. Cars pollute, homes pollute, we pollute. All right, so once again, that's at a cost to the environment. So let's try to get at this. Get at this question here. Do conservation and green space policies, low impact developments, lessen these effects? Once again, not do they solve or increase environmental sustainability. Just can green areas mitigate the effects of urban growth? Okay. So nature provides benefits. The water we drink, the air we breathe, oil, it all comes from nature. Okay, so I'll use this definition of nature and its benefits. Ecological processes from natural and semi-natural ecosystems that are of relative worth to humans. Okay? Natural and semi-natural. Natural, a complete, pristine conservation areas, but also semi-natural. Those trees, those palms in front of the Hippodrome, in front of a downtown area, those are part of the natural environment. They provide benefits. They're living things. Okay, so let's assess how these things improve our well-being. And we'll use water quality and carbon dioxide as examples to understand these trade-offs, these benefits, but also these costs. Okay? So once again, nature, we're part of nature, and nature is a part of cities, whether we want to or not. That tree in front of the hotel, or these conservation areas, or these parks, they all form part of this urban ecosystem. Okay? So nature is part of that ecosystem. Humans in cities determine what nature is maintained, what isn't, where it's at, what kind of plants, what size of plants, where we plant them. All cities and natural areas are not the same. The type of vegetation we have here in Gainesville is different from the type of vegetation we have in Portland. It's different from New York, different from Phoenix, etc. Okay? So nature functions differently. People think, act, behave differently. Okay? And people have different perceptions of nature. What's one person's shade tree is another person's source of allergies and bird dropping that mess up their real nice, fancy, expensive cars. Okay, so that's another thing we'll keep in mind as we go through this and discuss nature. So let's use water as an example. The trade-off between urban development and water. Focus on storm water, which is excess water that leaves the system and causes all sorts of bad problems that we have to deal with, either through engineering structures or policies. So when it rains, vegetation, that natural environment captures that water, stores it, slowly releases it back to the atmosphere. What it doesn't store, it infiltrates into the soil. Water is recharged. All right, so there's kind of a balance going on there. So when we pave over, we remove that vegetation, we remove that understory, now we don't have that much storage. All right, now that water needs to go somewhere. When we pave over, we can't infiltrate that water back into the ground. Okay, so that water has to go somewhere. So once that water leaves that surface, it goes through that pavement, picks up all those bad pollutants, carries it to our water bodies, where we get our drinking water supplies. Okay, so there it is. There's no one. We pave. We have homes. We have houses. We have roads, but now we have pollution we got to deal with. Right? So, and that's a loss of nature. Okay, so a natural system, forested area. Once again, all that water is being captured and slowly being released back into the atmosphere or into the ground. Only 10% of it runs off. Right? That's not a lot. We talk about land. Some of the previous speakers talked about land uses, right, and the advantages different land uses have as far as the economy and society. So let's look at that environmental effect. Commercial and industrial areas, right? We no longer have that vegetation. We no longer have those soils. The water can't be stored. That water leaves the system, picks up all those pollutants, goes into the streets, creates flooding. So there's kind of one black and white example of what happens when we lose nature. Okay? So there's practices we can do. There's a new concept. A lot of planners are starting to use it, green infrastructure, low impact development, where we try to integrate nature into developments. We treat water as a resource more than a waste. So people are starting to use bioswales, rain gardens, forest buffers, green roofs as a way to mitigate those effects. Okay? So there's a way that we can still work with nature, maintain nature in cities, and mitigate some of these problems. Okay? So there's that a benefit. And how can we assign an importance to these benefits? This is an example from New York City, where they had a choice. They could build an $8 billion water filtration plant, pay $300 million a year to operate it, or they could maintain their watershed, the forested watersheds, regulate activities on the land, use practices that maintain those forested areas, didn't compact those soils, minimize impervious surfaces. We found that that was less expensive than paving over, building over the watershed, or building that water plant. So there's a way that we can assign an economic value, a benefit to nature, okay? In this case of water. But let's talk about carbon dioxide, and now we'll start to get into these trade-offs. That nothing's as black and white as that first example I gave you with water, okay? So carbon dioxide is increasing in the atmosphere. And this increased carbon dioxide, there's a lot of studies that are showing that it's affecting climate, okay? So normally plants grow, they capture that carbon dioxide, store it for a long period of time. When they die, they release it back to the atmosphere. Oceans capture some of that carbon dioxide, soils capture some of that carbon dioxide, and they release it. But with industrial activity and with cars, now we have an increased amount of carbon dioxide. A lot of people propose that through vegetation, we can capture some of that carbon dioxide. Okay, so let's focus down, look at cities, and what's the role of trees and carbon dioxide. Okay? So as trees grow, they take up that carbon dioxide. They incorporate it as carbon, as wood, into the living matter. Okay, so these trees grow, the leaves drop, branches drop, they decompose, they release some of that carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. The tree grows, it matures, it dies, it then releases that carbon dioxide. All right? So Well, there's that carbon. So it directly affects carbon dioxide concentration. Indirectly, those trees cause shade. And if that tree is in the right place, in the right location, it will shade a building. If it shades a building, the building's cooler in the summer. If the building's cooler in the summer, you don't use as much energy. You don't use so much energy, power plant doesn't have to produce that energy, less carbon dioxide to make, okay? So trees reduce carbon dioxide concentrations directly and indirectly, okay? So let's look at what happens at the local scale, in the Orlando area, okay? I'm an academic, so I couldn't let you leave here without showing you some fancy graphs and tables and numbers, okay? So this is the University of Central Florida. It's right on the edge of East Orlando, right on the edge of urban and suburban Orlando, okay? There's a couple of things going on in this graph. We have traffic. East Orlando, once again, more open, rural, and West Orlando proper, the major urban area. NEEE, that's the net amount of carbon dioxide exchange in the system, the amount of carbon dioxide leaving the area, the University of Central Florida, and the amount of carbon dioxide being captured by that general area, okay, in East Orlando. And we also have traffic volume. So as you can see, traffic, on this line right here, 0. Anything above that is carbon dioxide emissions. Anything below that are carbon dioxide capture, okay? So we have traffic. This is the hours of the day, the number of vehicles per hour. Obviously, rush hour, there's a peak of carbon dioxide emissions. In the afternoon rush hour, we get another peak of carbon dioxide emissions. Okay? So let's look at that system. We have East Orlando and West Orlando. West Orlando, that's Orlando, right? The urban area is right above this line, carbon dioxide emissions. On the east side, the more rural areas, we have more green space. East Orlando, we're starting to actually get some carbon dioxide capture, right? Carbon dioxide being stored by all that vegetation and all those natural areas in East Orlando. So that's good, right? So just kind of, what do you think? Relative to the amount of carbon dioxide that's emitted, how much do you think is captured by trees in a flat percentage? 50%? 70%? 10%? Less than 5%. We did a study in Miami-Dade, and we did a bunch of sampling, a bunch of modeling. We found that trees, on average, take up 3% of all the carbon dioxide emitted in a city. Not a lot. But if we compare the amount of carbon dioxide sequestration by trees relative to other carbon dioxide policies, ton per ton, trees are just as effective. So it's kind of a half full, half empty kind of perspective, right? You could say that trees don't do a lot, but then again, very few other carbon dioxide reduction policies in Miami-Dade County do anything to reduce CO2 policy. But ton per ton, they're comparable to a bunch of other carbon dioxide reduction policies, all right? So trees don't take a lot, so let's confuse you a little bit more and throw in some more nuances of the benefits and costs, okay? So trees are comparable to other carbon dioxide reduction strategies. As I said earlier, not all trees, not all cities, not all problems are the same. If we look at what type of trees are taking up that 3% of carbon dioxide, we found that 34% of that carbon dioxide in Miami-Dade County is being taken up by Melaleuca. Melaleuca is a highly invasive, highly undesirable tree. In the last century, they used to plant Melaleuca to drain the Everglades. Now they're trying to eradicate it. So if they're successful in eradicating Melaleuca, what's going to happen? You're going to have 34% more carbon dioxide. And then if you look at where that carbon dioxide is going on in Miami-Dade County, older residential areas, Melaleuca areas, the edge of the Everglades, and old pine rockland area, conservation area. Okay? So here's that trade-off. What do we want? Do you want carbon dioxide benefits, or do we want to eradicate invasive trees? You can't have both, right? So this gets into those objectives. What sustainability objective do you want? Do you want a natural environment with native plants, or do you want maximum carbon dioxide sequestration and the maximum amount of tree canopy, reduce that temperature and capture all that storm water? So nature also has costs. And obviously we all like to think that nature is great. Nature's like world peace. How can you be against it? But they have costs. You need to maintain trees. Like I said, trees are living things. They grow, they die. You need to remove litter. The fact that you have a conservation area there doesn't mean you have the opportunity to put a factory, a home, right? So that's at a cost. Social nuisances. Wetlands, they're great for stormwater capture, but they're also habitat for mosquitoes. Mosquitoes tend to cause different bad things and annoyances. And environmental. Vegetation burns. It can cause smoke. That smoke can cause a lot of bad things. And every time you maintain that vegetation, there's some CO2 emissions. Whenever we get a hurricane, there's some tree debris we have to deal with. So there's some benefits and costs. So it's not kind of comes as I wrap this up, not to leave you with the notion that all nature is bad. Once again, it depends on that objective. And if we want that objective, we're going to place importance of it. We have ways of doing it. So this is a real neat study they did in Auburn University. Okay? They looked at homes around Auburn, Alabama, and they looked at what effect trees and different types of trees had on home energy use. But they didn't just look at the size of the tree, the type of tree relative to the home. They also looked at homeowner behavior, whether they used Energy Star appliances, the type of home, right, the construction types they used for those homes. And they found that if those homes raised their thermostat by 1 degree Fahrenheit, that reduced electricity use by 4%. That's about $8 per month. If that same home, factoring in for all these other conditions, had 50% shade during the day, that reduced energy usage by 14%, $29 a month. And if that shade was dense, that reduced energy use by 19%, or $42 per month. So there's a benefit, a direct monetary benefit from nature. But, once again, not all cities are the same, not all people are the same, not all green spaces or forests are the same. Look at these two pictures. Which one looks nicer? Which one would you want in your backyard? The left or right? Depends. All different perspectives. But in general, people like open areas, a few trees, space to do their things. But let's go back and talk about this carbon dioxide and water, those two examples I gave you. Those trees aren't from there. They're from a nursery, right? They were grown, fertilized, transported, planted. 20% of those trees die. They have to be replaced. What happens with all those dead trees? Carbon dioxide emissions. All that transportation, carbon dioxide emissions. That turf needs to be watered. You probably have a tendency to probably fertilize, right? So there's some added water pollution. Whereas this backyard, natural, low maintenance, taking up carbon dioxide, not really using any water, but it doesn't look very nice. There's probably some non-native plants also, right? Undesirable, okay? So not all trees are the same. There's benefits and there's costs. So to summarize, highly productive, multifunctional natural systems are being converted to urban development, okay? We often use technologies to mitigate these problems that urbanization causes. For example, stormwater. It's easier, more efficient, quicker to build this versus a rain garden. But the benefit that nature has is that it has multiple benefits. You notice it didn't take up that much carbon dioxide in Miami-Dade, only 3%, but it reduces stormwater, it reduces temperature, provides recreation area. Okay? So part of that is that just these benefits are difficult to quantify, and they can change. You want as nice as green areas are, you also need homes, you also need cars. So conservation is generally not prioritized by city governments and decision makers. So, I hopefully I didn't confuse you too much. Hopefully I added some more little facts for you to make more informed decisions. Okay? So cities and natures are linked, right? That tree in front of your home is providing benefits. The tree right next to your home that gives you shade, that reduces your energy use, will eventually grow and die. So it also has costs that need to be factored. Depending on the place, your environmental objectives, nature can be very efficient at solving those problems, and in other contexts, it can. Okay? So nature has a value, but we also need to factor in those costs. and the benefit that nature has as opposed to other environmental technologies and policies is, once again, those co-benefits that you get a lot for very little. Okay? All right. Thank you.